Welcome to another session of Stelmo's Rants and Raves. Naturally, I'm Stelmo, so let's just jump right in here. I had to come back on today because I don't know who M. Dowling is, but whoever they are, they have written an article, and here's the headline: Markwayne Mullin needs to go ASAP. He's a disaster. And I don't know, I have kind of mixed emotions here because let me just, it says here, Markwayne Mullin is a disaster as Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security and is not deporting the people here illegally. I waited to complain about him to give him an opportunity to show he can do the job. He can't do it. Secretary Mullin doesn't know what he is doing. In fact, he's encouraging illegal aliens to apply for citizenship once again. So, I agree that Secretary Mullin needs to go, although I highly doubt that the president is going to fire him. And the reason I say that is because I'm not sure that Secretary Mullin isn't actually following what the Trump administration wants done. Because, look, the Trump administration came in like a house on fire. He shut down the border, and they started going after the illegals. And I live in a state, well, I think all the states anymore have tons of illegals. And nobody buys, anybody with a head on their shoulders buys this 17 or 18 million nonsense. I'm going to say it's at least 50 million. I mean, I think the number is huge because anywhere you travel now, there are plenty of them. And how do you know? Well, they don't speak English. That's how you know. And there are areas where this was never a problem. It's now a problem. And I live in a red state, and it's a big problem. And I'm here to tell you that more and more of these illegals, and I don't know if these are anchor babies or what they are, but these people are going and getting educated. And I now see them working many of the jobs. Again, they have Hispanic names. And fortunately, here in, at least in the area I'm in Florida, these people are taught English. They're forced to learn English. There are some areas like Miami-Dade County where they just have Spanish teachers and allow these people to go through life not learning English nor assimilating into our culture. And that therein lies the problem. But anyway, we saw up in Minnesota, so somebody got shot and killed. Somebody who was in the wrong. And let me say her partner was in the wrong as well, and her partner should have been charged. If this were something happening in the inner city and it were two young black boys, let's say, or black men, you can bet that they would have been charged. Both of them, if that were the case. But here, everyone was afraid that the mainstream media was going to ostracize them because, that's her partner, and she just got shot and killed. Well, the partner was complicit in that crime, and you can't get away from that. But anyway, that was the turning point. That's when the Trump administration decided to dial back on the exporting of people from this country. And so, I somewhere here, so I want to find it because I don't see where it is. I was there before, so I read it. So it says here that Mullin mentioned we naturalized 900,000 foreigners in a year. That is more than we deported. Exactly. We would have to be deporting many million a year for there to be any meaningful decrease. So this is yet another area where the Trump administration has decided to give in to the mainstream media and say to heck with our base, who put us in here to do the very thing that we had been doing. I again want to point out many, many years ago, exactly who said it now. I always thought it was Falwell who said it, but whoever said it, it doesn't matter. They coined the phrase the silent majority. The majority of middle class people remain fairly quiet. They may complain amongst themselves, and I think partially that's a problem. They need to be more vocal. They need to let their elected officials hear their displeasure over things that are going on. And right now, the lack of enforcement, of immigration enforcement, is telling. You can see it here. There's it's Palm Beach Boulevard in Lee County, Florida. And there's a section of Palm Beach Boulevard that I'm going to say basically runs from the interstate to Business 41. And the parameters that I put forth is probably a little bit bigger than the actuality. It's probably about a mile or maybe two less than that. But anyway, this whole area is just rampant with illegal people. And, when ICE was in the area, you go down the street, it was deserted. You didn't see nobody. Half of the taco stands and stuff that they put up shut down. And that's something else that I want to say. You are never going to convince me that our health department is getting out there and checking out the health concerns for all of these stands. There are so many of them. And one of the things that has me toasted is I know people who in years past had to fight the government because the government told them they couldn't put up any flags advertising their business. But now if you're an illegal and you have a taco stand, yeah, no problem. Put up as many flags and signs and stuff as you want up. And if that's happening in a red county, in a red state, you can just imagine what it's like in the rest of the country. It's sad. It really is sad. Because we will lose our country. Donald Trump often talks about how he's trying to prevent us from losing the country. But I think that was the old Donald Trump. The new Donald Trump, who's listening to his donors and doing what they want. Well, these are business people. Of course, they want to hire someone that's going to work for less than minimum wage. And of course, they always say, oh, well, Americans don't want these jobs. Well, that's nonsense. I know of a lot of cases where Americans lost their jobs that they very much wanted and were replaced with somebody that doesn't even speak English, and I suspect are illegal. But of course, I have no way of actually proving that. But they had good employees, and so you have to wonder, well, why would they get rid of them and get an entity that's really unknown? And I think the reason is it's all financial. That's why these people are donating to these political candidates, to make sure that they can get cheap labor. And here in Florida, and I know I mentioned it but I'm still, I'm trying to wrap my mind around this. Why in Florida we have a $14 minimum wage minimum? I don't get that. I think the federal minimum wage is only around $8. And I quite frankly don't think there really should be a minimum wage, but you definitely have to have a minimum wage when you got all these illegals here. But I believe that the free market should determine what people are paid. These businesses would have to find out what it is that they could pay people and get reliable people that are willing to do the work at a point that they're willing to pay. I think some of them would realize, just like now, that there are places that pay more than $14 an hour. All the power to them. If they can do that and their customer base with whatever they have will support what they're doing, so be it. But $14 an hour front line, or I should say first line of your low end worker in these fast food places. $14 is far too much money. It's why. So what's happening? So they're paying more and they're doing less work. I know there's one store. It's I haven't seen the books or anything, but I used to go there all the time, and I go there now, and there always used to be a line. There's never anyone in line now. And I suggest part of the problem are their prices. There is one item in this store that I used to buy that now costs 2.5 times what it used to. And I suggest a good portion of that raise is the increase in the minimum wage. So I don't know what the Republicans were thinking about in Florida. Because the Republican argument always is, and this has been proven out time and time again over numerous decades and millennia, that when labor costs too much and the price of goods goes up too much, people stop buying the goods and people end up losing jobs because they just don't have the customer base that they used to have. And we're hearing from a lot of these places, McDonald's and Burger King and all of them, all of their sales are down. People, what used to be a common thing people did is now a luxury for them. And they have to watch their spending. They have to watch their spending. And we're doing nothing to fix this problem. And so, yeah, I agree. When Markwayne Mullin the other day come out with his comments that suggested he would support legalizing most of these people that are here, that's when people said, hey, this guy is really going off the reservation, so to speak. And, this isn't something, I don't know what he was thinking, other than he let his true colors bleed through. And the problem is, I don't know what's going to happen. See, because I think Trump is the one who's determined that we should pull back on enforcing the immigration. I don't see ICE in. You used to see them out and about. You never see an ICE vehicle anymore. Who knows where they are? They're not. I can take them to plenty of areas and plenty of counties where they would round up substantial numbers of illegal people. But they're not going to do it. And yet, I think we're being gaslit, and I think it's a shame. I really think it is a shame because, yet, it looked good from the start. But, here he's making a point. We naturalized 900,000 foreigners in a year, which is more than we deported. So, taking their 17 million, it would take more than 17 years to get rid of them all. And that's not going to happen. And at some point, there will be somebody who will rationalize legalizing them. And you know that person, if they're a Republican, you can almost bet that they have accepted something for that vote. And I think the only question that one would have to try to determine is, was it something legal or something illegal? And I wouldn't be surprised if it's the latter. But perhaps it's the former, but I don't think it is. I think it's the latter. I think the amount of money, when we see the high volume of fraud that's going on, you can just imagine what these fraudsters are willing to pay to keep the con going. And I, for one, think many of these politicians, I know those on the loony left, 80% of them are corrupt. But I think the number is much higher than we would like to admit for those that are on the right of center. You know, and again, I'm going to repeat, and I'll probably repeat this 3 or 4 times. I'm still, besides myself, trying to figure out why Donald Trump would have endorsed Lindsey Graham's sister to run for a full term. She's already come out and said she's going to be a social issue warrior. We don't need any social issue warriors on the right. You know, Lindsey Graham was another one. Years ago, Rush Limbaugh coined them Lindsey Grahamnesty, and that's because Lindsey Graham voted to legalize the people here. Unfortunately, when these people take money from their donors, and their donors have businesses, they want cheap labor. And they want to do it without going to jail for it. You know, I've said for a long time, if they were serious about ending the problem with illegal aliens here, they just have to start arresting and charging the employers. Because it is against the law for these people to employ these people. You start putting the employers in prison, and you will see how fast that they stop using that illegal labor. But of course, then the donors would be outraged. So, you know, Donald Trump, you know, was a non-politician, and I contend that's one of the reasons he had so much support. But here, come around his 3rd term, you know, I find myself disagreeing with so much stuff. You know, nobody told Donald Trump that he should make the Epstein files an issue. He chose to do that. And at every rally that I heard, and I listened to most of his rallies, he always said that he was going to end it and release the whole file so that people could see. But then I guess somebody woke him up as to who exactly is in this file, and he said, whoa, we can't be losing those people. But the message Donald Trump is saying is having a multi-level justice system is agreeable in my administration. So he really can't complain when he becomes the victim of it once his term ends. And how bad it'll be, it remains to be seen. It will depend on, obviously, who is in power in all 3 branches of the government. And, you know, I want to hope and pray that its Republicans can retain control. But I fear a lot of the voters are going to stay home because all the issues they care about, the Republicans have deserted them on. What has the House done in 18 months, and what has the Senate done in 18 months? Next to nothing. Really, very, very little has been done. Yeah, they spend a lot of time doing investigations, but these investigations go nowhere. They investigated Joe Biden for 2 years. We know of all the crimes that Joe Biden committed, and they couldn't impeach him on one of those charges, not a one. But they're out there telling us we're going to get this one, that one, and the other one, and we always hear that all these people are going to face some sort of penalty, and it never seems to happen. How many times have we heard a Republican come out and talk about Ilhan Omar marrying her brother, and that charges will be forthcoming? When are they going to be forthcoming? I mean, what takes so long? There's nothing complex about that case. It should take a good lawyer, like one day to do the work, and then perhaps we'll say a couple weeks waiting to get all the official certified copies and stuff that they need. But then once they have that, they can go in front of a grand jury and get an indictment. It doesn't take a year. It doesn't take 18 months. None of these people are being held accountable. accountable. And I really don't get the Republicans in this matter, because I think they need to brush off the dust off those history books, and they start to need to learn what happens when socialists consolidate their power, because it's not a pretty picture for the opposition. The opposition, and sadly, as is far too often the case, their whole family gets sent to the mortician. And we know this. I mean, how many millions and millions of people have been sent to the mortician by one leftist and or another? You can name them: Fidel Castro, Raul Castro, Che Guevara, Vladimir Lenin, Leon Trotsky, Zhou Enlai, Mao Zedong, even Xi today in China is eradicating, what are they, Uyghurs? I don't know if I'm saying that term right, but the Chinese don't like them, and they're trying to eradicate them. So basically what they do is they force sterilize the women and then work everyone until they become a candidate to go to the mortician. And again, we know this is happening, but we close our eyes to it because we're not willing to do the things necessary to stop it. And so there's a hypocrisy there, but anymore, and that's all we're seeing with our own eyes, the hypocrisy from these Republicans who aren't doing anything of what they said they were going to do. So the question is why would anybody put them back in office? Well, one reason is because the loony leftists will really take us over the cliff, and they've told us that that's what they're going to do. But what I fear is far too many Republicans are going to just sit home in disgust. And because they won't be coming out to vote, it will put the socialists into power. And anyway, the socialists are going to win in all the inner cities because of the poor. You know, I saw another headline. I got to talk about this one today. You know, the government's now claiming that, and let me see if I can pull this headline up. It's on another site here. But, you know, when I saw this headline, I said, you got to be kidding me. And as always, when I go and look for a thing. But what they're saying is that the rise in prices, which they call inflation, it's not actually inflation, but the rise in prices, which they have gone up and they have gone up, is now they are saying it went up 33%. Now, I know that that's not true. How do I know it? Because when President Trump put the 35% tariff on the Chinese goods coming into this country, things that I bought in Walmart went up 40%. Of course, they told us there was no rise in the prices because of the tariffs. And, you know, I say to myself, do they think we're stupid? They must. They have to think we're stupid. They see, this has always been the Democrat playbook, you know, you prevaricate to your people. And you say something long enough, maybe they'll believe it. So maybe that's the idea. I don't know. But the cost of food went up since the Bidens a lot more than 33%. In fact, so many things are more than double what they used to be. And one of my favorite items is not quite double, but it's up about 85% since the Biden administration. It's almost double, not quite. Pretty soon it will be there. And so I don't get it. But, you know, I just find it, I can't find the article right now, but anyway, it was there. And I said, this doesn't surprise me. Because, again, the government's trying to gaslight. They know there's a problem here, right? And we'll just have to wait and see. Now, I don't know if this is a good thing or not, but apparently Todd Blanche's nomination has cleared its first hurdle. So apparently a couple of the Republicans who were saying they were going to vote against them have changed their mind once he did away with Trump's and putting aside considerable funds for people who the government unnecessarily either harassed and or prosecuted or whatever the case might have been. And, you know, it wasn't put there for the president or his family, but people, you know, that's the rumor mill went out, the mainstream media, and unfortunately too many Republicans fall prey for this all the time. You know, they just think, right, oh my God, this is terrible. We all have to be against it as well. And so let me tell you, inflation is much higher than 33%, and the very poor, the poor that are stuck in these inner cities, they don't have the money to move away. They're going to keep voting socialist. And this problem is going to become more and more pronounced because of our debt. You know, we're in a doom loop. You know, we actually became in a doom loop when we have to start borrowing 100% of the money we need to pay the interest on our debt. And so this number is going up exponentially, and it's they keep saying unsustainable, but they never talk about what they're going to do to try to fix the problem or change it or anything. It just doesn't happen. Again, it's more gaslighting. And unfortunately, you know, the loony leftists, they are who they are. They tell us who they are. The problem with Republicans is they really hide who they are. They claim to be someone who they are not. And unfortunately, we find out after they're in office. And it's a shame because it is going to cost us our country. I become more and more pessimistic as more and more time goes by because nobody is looking to fix the problems that will ultimately collapse our economy, which will then bring in, let's just put it this way, it'll be a terrible time for everybody. And let's try to keep our hopes up somewhat, and we'll try to keep a positive thing here as I wish everyone a good day. Stay safe. It's a crazy world out there. It gets crazier by the day. Have a good one. Bye-bye.